I thought we'd hear more about Red Bull, but we had a different commercial here this morning. Ryan Stiner, where are you, Ryan? He's going to come. He has some surprising advice, and he is Joel and Shannon. That must be interesting to be Joel's son. Well, we'll hear about that at his memorial. Big shoes to fill.
I'm going to stand behind the podium. I probably wouldn't normally do this because I feel more comfortable walking up and down like the previous speakers, but I got to be real careful here because my grandma Lucille's, we have a lot of history, very important to me, and I could find myself rambling. So I'm going to do my best to stick to the script that I've written here. Thank you to everybody who has presented so far. It's really nice to hear all the testimonials. All of them are so unique. A lot of them are unexpected in positive ways. And it's not a surprise that my grandmother was so important to so many people. It's nice to see that, and I know that she would be smiling. She is smiling right now. When my father, Joel Stiner, asked if I would speak, I said absolutely. And I think that the first thing that we thought I would talk about, among the thousands of things that I could speak on, would be that we share the same birthday. My grandmother Lucille and I were born on the same day, different year. She was born February 8th, 1923, and I was born February 8th, 1987. And the bond that is created because of that happen chance is incredible. And needless to say, we share a lot of similarities. The constant movement, always involved in something, never sitting still. I would like to think that I fill a room, but my grandmother, nobody matches her experience with that. She's incredible. So I wanted to just say a few things about my grandmother, and a lot of them have already been said. So I'm going to be a little bit redundant here, but I did want to share one story in particular that stands out to me often because I can remember it like it was yesterday, one of those where you remember every detail. I can remember the smell. I can remember the amount of light that was coming in through my car when this was happening. So I want to share that story with you, but I just want to preface it with a few notes. Grandma Lucille was the lucky heir to a flock of grandchildren. There's tons of grandchildren, and most of them are here today. And that was all thanks to the hard work and focused effort of her children, Aunt Fran, Uncle Paul, Uncle Larry, Aunt Kathy, and my father, Joel. Each grandchild shares a unique, one-of-a-kind bond with Grandma Lucille, and they did growing up. Some of us were fortunate enough to experience this special relationship together. So for example, my cousin Stacy, my beautiful cousin Stacy and I, where is Stacy? Yeah, Stacy and I, okay, she's taking her. Stacy and I sort of grew up together. She was something close to about a year, a month, a week, and a day older than I am. And because of that, we always bonded. We were very outgoing, and we were always getting in trouble together at my grandmother's house. But these stories detail a supremely wonderful childhood and endless reserve of stories that we can pull from. And they highlight a grandmother who played an active role in shaping who we are today. Any of you that were close to Grandmother Lucille, I'm guessing grandchildren, if you remember the dove cage, or how about the tangelo tree? And with its wonderful aroma of grotesquely oversized fruit. How about our impromptu baths in the garden dumpsters? Does anyone remember doing that? I think I have pictures of my cousin Stacy and I in a green garden dumpster filled with water that we turned into a bath. And my grandmother did for us. And it was fun. How about the dollhouse that's been mentioned multiple times? Fun, but also tedious and a little bit nerve-wracking. How about going to McDonald's before she took us to a movie? Not really the food necessarily, but the toy that we got and we got to play with. On that note, I will always remember one time we went to a movie, and it was before the movie started, and we had just had McDonald's, and Stacy and I were pretty wound up. And Grandma, of course, got us candy to calm us down. So we're sitting there in the movie theater waiting for the movie to start, and it's really cold. And I looked over at my grandmother and I said, "It's really cold in there." And she said, "Well, they did that on purpose, Ryan. They want to give you the feel like you're in space right now." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Absolutely." She goes, they create this environment so you feel like you're in that rocket ship with those astronauts. We were at the Apollo 13 movie. And so she had this wonderful way of taking a situation and turning it into something fun and adventurous. Because that wasn't the case. It was just really cold and the AC was on. You know, looking back, I realized these things. But if you jog your memory a bit, try to recall Schwann's Delivery Guy. Or how about the Ace Hardware man that we all knew she had a crush on? We never really saw him, but we knew there was something there because she went to that hardware store all the time. I could talk about the red radio flyer, which was mentioned earlier. The red radio flyer wagon that she'd pull each of us in as we helped her hang clothes to dry on the line outside in the warm Arizona sun. And you'll recall as well when you hang clothes on that line and you pull them off and they'd be like cardboard, stiff cardboard, crispy little things that you'd then try to fold and crackle, and it was just old school, but it was nice. It was the way Grandma did things. How about onion rings? Or caramel corn, or oatmeal cookies, oatmeal raisin cookies, or donuts. Everybody knows her famous donuts. Or those saltines. She always had a can of damn saltines. You know, it was interesting because she was a respected school nurse, but, you know, here she is making some of the healthiest food decisions for her grandchildren and making donuts and onion rings and every fried food you could imagine. We loved it, and that's why we loved going to Grandma Lucille's. Matlock, or pool, Riazzi's, Phoenix Suns, pianos and trumpets, tatting, and I'm not talking about the kind where you get, you know, permanent skin art. Sewing, her Keds that she wore. She had every color of Keds. Crossword puzzles. She put together the world's largest crossword puzzle. You could buy it online or buy it over on TV. You call it and they ship you the world's largest crossword puzzle. It was massive. It was 8 feet by 8 feet, something like that, with normal sized pieces. And you put it together, and your treat at the end is it creates the world's largest, the world's largest jigsaw puzzle, and then you put it together and it creates the world's largest crossword puzzle, which then you have to fill in. So she puts together this trillion-piece jigsaw puzzle only to make the world's largest crossword puzzle that she then filled in meticulously. In pen. Mandy? I heard Mariana, but preceding Mariana was Mandy, and that dog was crazy. Shuffleboard or Budweiser. I haven't touched on a tenth of the memories we share, but those should help to bring back memories of a wonderful childhood. But what I do want to share with you is something a bit more serious. And just as Grandma had fun, playful side, she also had the ability to focus her sharp intellect and craft some of the most lasting advice when you asked and when you didn't ask. So the following is about such a time. In 2005, I graduated from high school. I moved away to college and I attended UC Irvine. After a year, I knew that what the school wasn't for me, so I moved home and I finished my collegiate time at Fresno State. And I think we can all attest to the unique challenges kids face at that age and during that period in life, and I was no different. In 2007, I found myself at a crossroads, a kind of personal breaking point, if you will. And having made some decisions which at the time seemed like they would result in my untimely demise. I had exhausted every available channel of communication possible, and I found myself sitting in my car. I was alone in my car. It was a warm afternoon in Fresno, and I was completely and utterly disappointed. You know those times in life where everything sort of comes to a head. You're just reflecting on everything, and it's not a good picture. So I'm utterly disappointed for having caused what seemed by all accounts to be an irreparable situation. And it was at this moment I had the fleeting idea to call my grandmother Lucille. I couldn't tell you why, because I didn't really call Grandma Lucille in these moments, but I thought to call her, and I did. I explained to my grandmother in detail what was going on, and I remember very well having tears running down my cheeks, and they were getting hot. I had explained the situation and how bad things had gotten and how bad I had made things. I explained how much damage I felt I caused, how much pain I felt, and how hopeless things were. It was bad. The entire thing was bad, and I knew it. And now this woman, someone with whom I shared a birthday, someone who loved me so much, knew it. She knew all of the details. It was a very grave situation. And there was silence after I explained everything. What follows is going to serve as the nucleus to the story, but what happened next and the words uttered by my grandmother served as the heart of the short message, life-changing, and I'll never forget it. She said, "Ryan?" I said, "Yes, Grandma." I had tears just pouring down my face. She said, "You're going to have to speak up. I can't hear you." And my hearing's not so good. Did you say something? Profound. But think about that for a minute. Everyone's laughing because they know exactly what that sounds like. Think about that for a minute. Speak up. I can't hear you. And she was right, like she always was. My problem, the one I was so upset about, the one I was losing sleep over, the one that had consumed every ounce of attention for weeks, if not months, that problem was only as big as I made it. I chose to make it huge. I chose to make it catastrophic. I chose to give it life. We choose the things to which we give importance and value. When we begin to worry about circumstance, whether self-created or not, we are actively choosing to give life to something which, by all accounts, should be put to death. When we choose fear, when we fear those things over which we exert no control, we're actively giving the enemy food for consumption. We're allowing the very thing standing in our way to grow wider and taller, heavier, and more permanent. So Grandma Lucille and her poor hearing taught me something invaluable. When something stands out and something stands in our way, and there's an obstacle in our way, we have to look it in the eye and we have to say, "I can't hear you. I can't see you." And that's what she taught me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Now Joel Stiner comes. Earlier we heard it suggested that Lucille was always in perpetual motion. Here you have it again. It was passed on. Joel Stiner.
There is some truth to the old adage that sorrow loves company, and right now, we love your company. Gail and Melanie, thank you so much for leading us through the beautiful music and singing, and thank you to Doug Ross. Doug officiated at Guy Davidson's memorial service just 3 months ago. For so many years, Guy was our pastor, and his was the last memorial service my mother attended. Tom thought you did a beautiful job. And Tom Zaworski and Nick Alcott and Harry Mitchell and Sean and Nick and Ryan, thank you for your comments. And local friends and neighbors of Mom, thank you for the kindness that you always showed our Mom. Mom had so many special neighbors, and please forgive me for not mentioning all of them, but Sue and Joe Alcott across the street always came up in Mom's conversations. And June Beck, who was right behind Mom, June recently was an honored guest of the late actress Maureen O'Hara, as O'Hara was honored by the Academy Awards Board of Governors at a dinner in Hollywood, because June is Maureen O'Hara's web magazine publisher. But more important than that, June was my internet connection to my paper-based mother. She would invite Mom over to her house and show Mom things on the internet that I would send to June from time to time. And Eula Birch and Alan Beverly Swimmer and Don Morton. Don, as I got to share with you and Linda yesterday, we still have coffee coasters that Mom made out of the photos of flowering cactus in Mom's yard that you took. And to all of Mom's neighbors, I would just want to say we've been so negligent in failing to convey to you over the years our gratitude to you, that Mom was surrounded by people who truly cared for her. I want you to know that Mom thrived on your kindness, and she let her children know by the constant flow of kind comments that Mom had for all of you. And for those of you who have traveled thousands of miles from Florida and New Jersey and North Carolina and Iowa and Washington State, well, we are so grateful for your presence here today. We have a saying where I work, and that is travel loses its glamour fast. It is hard to travel. So to everyone here today, on behalf of my brothers and sisters, thank you for joining us as we honor our beloved mother, Lucille Stiner. You know, we always felt that we were the luckiest kids in the world to have Lucille as our mom. What kid doesn't feel that way about their mother? And that is as it should be. But your presence here today affirms our own love for her, and your presence here today, that means just so much to us. My wife Shannon and I enjoy walking and hiking within 1 or 2 hours of Fresno. We can be at any number of national or state parks, and all the hikes are different. But on the stressful hikes, as the breathing becomes difficult and the conversations end, I start to think of things that well up from deep recesses within me, often from a time and place long ago. I know this experience is not unique to me. In fact, recently I was reading something a friend of mine, Greg Crawford, wrote on his Facebook page about a hike that he took in the Superstition Mountains. And he wrote, "I thought that hiking would be the remedy that I needed to help clear my mind. No TV, no Facebook." Doesn't that sound nice? Zero chance of politics, of news to inadvertently surface into a conversation. And then Greg went on to describe how his brain on his hike was dialing up old TV commercials from his youth. Commercials, interestingly enough, that had some connection with his deceased father, Jerry. He concluded that memories are powerful, even insidious, and we can never remove them. And Greg is right, but I would also suggest that it was his thoughts of his father that first triggered all of those other thoughts. Well, since I learned of my mother's death on Christmas Day, it seems like I have been on a very long and strenuous hike. Suddenly, when I least expect it, a thought involving Mom will pop up. It might be something trivial, like Mom making donuts for me and my siblings when we were just little rugrats, or when she continued to make them later in life for her neighbor kids and grandkids and their friends. And then I think, oh no, I sure hope we have Mom's donut recipe. We do have Mom's donut recipe, don't we? Oh, I know. I'll ask her to write it down. Oh, wait, I can't ask her. She's not here. Or it might be a recollection of something not so pleasant. You know, as kids, because Mom was a nurse, we couldn't fake illness. And Sean, I should have tipped you off to that. When we were actually ill, I remember several times having my mother administer an injection into my butt. And later in life, she would do the same for neighbors who needed medicine administered to them. Not in their butts, but in their eyes. Although there might have been some she would want it in. But I didn't know about them. No, she wasn't the neighborhood drug pusher, she was the neighborhood nurse. And then, just like on a difficult hike, another thought pops into my head about Mom's family life when she was a child. Now, of course, I was not there. But what I do know is Mom's story really began in December 1912, just over 104 years ago, when Charles William Jekyll married Anna Thecla Watchmuth. And Charles and Anna had 9 children. And Mom was one of those 9 children. She had 3 older siblings, Arnold, born in 1915, and Elmer, born in 1916, and Elaine, born in 1921. And then along came Lucille in 1923. And I found it very interesting to note that when my mother was born on February 8th, 1923, that is one of the coldest winter storms in Wisconsin's history. So I think there was some significance to that. She arrived with panache, if you will. Carl was born in 1925. Robert, who we knew as Uncle Bob, was born in 1927. Dale was born in 1930. And Dennis was born in 1936, and Beatrice was born in 1940. Now, Uncle Dale is now the sole remaining sibling, and he just traveled to Arizona this last Thanksgiving. Mom's baby sister, Beatrice, just passed away last year. And I only mention that fact because Mom and Dee would go out for their weekly girls' day out. They were a bit on the wild side. After their morning oatmeal, they would, for thrills, head over to Joann's Fabrics or 10-piece sales for the entire morning. You know, I would ask Mom about those weekly trips out, and that is when I learned, Joel, what happens at Joann's stays at Joann's. And then another one of those thoughts popped into my head. I wonder if Bee's death accelerated my mom's death. I wonder that because my mom sure did love Bee. And Robin and Barbara, thank you for sharing your mother, Bee, with our mom. Of course, when we got to visit Mom's siblings, Uncle Bob, who resided in Phoenix since 1956, and Uncles Carl and Dale and Dennis and her sister Bee, those were the ones I personally met. When we got to visit Mom's siblings, we learned some interesting stories and whatever other qualities Mom had. She really loved practical jokes. In fact, that seemed to be in the Jekyll family DNA. And while sometimes the details varied, leading one to wonder just how much of some of these stories got embellished over the years, this is no embellishment. Mom had a mischievous impishness to her that left no doubt she saw the fun in life. She was no prude, and that made her a lot of fun to be with. There is the story of her as a child, hollowing out a loaf of fresh brown bread that her mother made, especially for the minister and his wife, who were just about to pay a visit, and filling it with gelatin and reassembling it. Now, sure enough, the minister paid a visit and left with the doctored loaf. Now, I doubted that story myself. It seemed implausible to me, but two separate family members on two separate occasions said, "Oh, Joel, I've got to tell you something your mom did as a teenager," and then proceed to tell me essentially the same story. One joke I observed firsthand involved my brother Paul. Paul had some friends that would come over to our house and walk right over to the refrigerator before even saying hello, and then help themselves to whatever was inside. Now, that was not a problem, but Mom saw an opportunity. So she made a batch of white divinity candy, placed a walnut right in the middle of each piece of candy, and placed them on a serving tray in the refrigerator, just asking to be eaten. And like clockwork, in comes, I believe it was Dwight Cahill, but it could have been Steve Conklin, but he goes right to the refrigerator, sees the divinity, grabs a couple of pieces, and stuffs them in his mouth, only to spit them out in the sink. You see, Mom made that beautiful candy with barium used for medical treatment. So it tasted just about like eating chalk dust. Aside from being a great practical joker, she was very generous, a conversationalist, intellectually curious, enjoyed learning throughout her life, and she was just so kind. But it would be a mistake to see her kindness as some kind of weakness. She was a complex woman with great depth. She had her opinions that sometimes surprised me. I can recall on a few occasions saying, "Mother, really?" So I do not pretend to speak for her. And my brothers and sisters all had their own relationship with Mom and saw her in their own way through their loving eyes. Living 600 miles away in California meant that the visits we once had as neighbors were just not possible any longer. But about 8 years ago, Mom and I started taking road trips to places throughout Arizona. Tucson, Tombstone, Payson, Mount Graham, Hannigan's Meadow, and Apache Lake. And on many of those trips, my brother Paul would join us. From my perspective, although we all know that no bumper sticker can fully define anyone, the one that I think Mom would place on her car of life is the one that we have all seen. Mean people suck. She understood. that reasonable people, in fact, disagree. But she also embraced the idea that we don't have to agree about anything to be kind to one another. We've already shared her ability to complete the crossword puzzle in ink each day, and her tatting and calligraphy skills. Much of what she would carefully inscribe came from Scripture, but Mom also had an ecumenical side. I have some of Mom's framed inscriptions hanging on my office wall in California. One is a quote attributed to Mahatma Gandhi, and it's a thought that he shared that there are 7 things that will destroy us: wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge